January 14th, 1888. Dakota Territory. The thermometer outside reads negative 42 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind screams across the frozen prairie like a living thing, hurling ice crystals hard enough to strip paint from wood. Inside the homes of Willow Creek Settlement, families huddle around cast-iron stoves, feeding them logs every 20 minutes, wrapped in every blanket they own, still shivering. Children sleep, 3 to a bed, for warmth. Fathers take turns staying awake through the night to keep the fires burning, knowing that if the flames die, their families die with them. But in one small house on the eastern edge of the settlement, something impossible is happening. Sarah Thornton, a 34-year-old widow with 3 young children, sits at her kitchen table in a cotton shirt. Not a coat, not a shawl, a simple cotton work shirt. Her children sleep soundly in the next room, their blankets kicked off because they are too warm. The air inside her home is a comfortable 68 degrees. And her stove? It has been cold for 6 hours. There is no roaring fire, no mountains of cordwood stacked outside, no miracle fuel, just silence, warmth, and the quiet satisfaction of a woman who knew she was right when everyone else said she was crazy. 6 months earlier, this same woman had been the laughingstock of Willow Creek. They had mocked her, called her a fool, predicted her children would freeze to death because of her arrogance. But on this bone-chilling night, while her neighbors burned through a winter's worth of firewood in a single week, Sarah Thornton is warm, and she is vindicated. This is her story. Let us go back to July 18th, 1887. Sarah Thornton arrives in Willow Creek with everything she owns packed into a single wagon. 3 children. Her husband, Thomas, dead 4 months from a logging accident in Minnesota. $12.70 to her name. No family. No connections. Just a homestead claim filed by mail, sight unseen, for 160 acres of Dakota grassland that the government is giving away to anyone desperate or brave enough to try to survive there. The land office had made it sound promising. Rich soil, plenty of water. What they did not mention was the wind. Constant, relentless. In summer, it bakes you. In winter, it kills you. The nearest tree is 6 miles away. Everything must be built from sod or imported lumber that costs 3 times what it does back east. Sarah's nearest neighbor, a man named Clayton Hodges, rides over the first day. Clayton owns 4 sections of land, 2,560 acres. He runs 300 head of cattle. He wears a wool suit even in summer and has a mustache waxed to sharp points. He looks at Sarah's wagon, at her children, at the pathetic pile of supplies, and he does not bother to hide his pity. "Ma'am," he says, "I do not mean to be unkind, but you need to understand something. Winter here is not like Minnesota winter. It is colder, windier, longer. Last year we had snow on the ground from October to May. I have seen grown men freeze to death walking from their barn to their house. 20 feet. That is how fast it happens." Sarah nods politely. "Thank you for the warning, Mr. Hodges." Clayton continues. "You are going to need a proper house. Sod will not do it. You need timber framing, double walls, and a big stove. And you are going to need cordwood. Lots of it. I go through 8 cords a winter, and I have a well-built house. You? You will need at least 6, and that is if you are careful. That is going to cost you $45 if you buy it, or 4 months of labor if you cut it yourself. Do you have $45? Sarah does not. She has $12.70. Clayton shakes his head. "Ma'am, I am sorry, but you need to think about those children. This is no place for a woman alone. You should sell the claim and go back east. I will give you $20 for it right now." Sarah looks him in the eye. "Thank you, Mr. Hodges, but we are staying." The second visitor arrives 3 days later. Captain William Brenner, retired Army Corps of Engineers. He had overseen the construction of Fort Randall and now advises settlers on building techniques. He has a textbook education and the confidence of a man who believes that knowledge comes only from universities. He walks Sarah's property and listens to her plan. She wants to build a small house, 14 by 16 feet, but she does not want to rely on cordwood. She has an idea, something her father told her about when she was a girl. He had heard about it from a trapper who had lived with a Mandan tribe. The earth, 6 feet down, Stays the same temperature all year. 55 degrees, summer or winter, always 55. If you could pull air from down there, up into your house, you would have free heat in winter and free cooling in summer. Sarah wants to dig trenches, bury clay pipes 4 feet deep in a spiral pattern, and connect them to her house. The cold winter air would get pulled down into the earth, warmed to 55 degrees, and then rise into her home. No fire needed, or at least much less fire. Captain Brenner listens. Then he laughs, not a chuckle, a full, condescending laugh. Mrs. Thornton, that is called geothermal nonsense. I have a degree in engineering from West Point. I have built fortifications in 3 territories. I have read every manual on thermodynamics published in the last 20 years. What you are describing violates basic principles of heat transfer. You cannot heat a home with buried pipes. The volume of air is too small. The temperature differential is insufficient. You would need a mechanical pump, which you do not have. And even if it worked, which it will not, the amount of labor required to dig those trenches would take you all summer. Labor you should be spending on planting crops and cutting firewood. This is foolishness. Sarah listens quietly. Then she says, "My father survived 30 winters in Minnesota. He taught me to trust nature before I trust books." Captain Brenner shakes his head and walks away. That woman is going to kill her children, he tells Clayton Hodges that evening. The third voice of doubt comes from Reverend Amos Hartwell, the circuit preacher who visits Willow Creek once a month. He is a thin, severe man who believes that suffering is a test from God and that pride is the deadliest sin. He hears about Sarah's plan and visits her on a Sunday. "Mrs. Thornton," he says, "I am concerned for your soul. This idea of yours, this refusal to do things the way everyone else does them, it reeks of pride. The Bible tells us that pride comes before a fall. Your neighbors are offering you wisdom, and you are rejecting it. That is not independence. That is arrogance. And when winter comes and your children are cold, you will have no one to blame but yourself." Sarah does not argue. She simply says, "Reverend, I appreciate your concern, but I am going to trust the wisdom my father gave me." By the end of July, the entire settlement knows about Sarah Thornton's crazy plan. She is mocked openly. Women whisper when she walks by. Men shake their heads. Clayton Hodges starts a betting pool on how long she will last. Most give her until December before she abandons the claim. But Sarah does not care. She has no choice. She cannot afford 6 cords of firewood. She cannot afford a massive stove. She has $12.70, 3 children, and an idea. So she picks up a shovel and starts digging. If you believe that practical wisdom is worth more than empty opinions, subscribe now. We are documenting the survival skills that history tried to forget. August 3rd, 1887. The sun rises at 5:15 in the morning. Sarah is already digging. She has been digging since 4. The plan is simple in concept, brutal in execution. She needs to bury 300 feet of clay pipe in a trench 4 feet deep. The pipes will run in a long spiral pattern, starting 40 feet from the house and ending at a vent hole in the foundation. Cold air will naturally sink into the pipes, travel underground where the earth will warm it, and then rise into the house through convection. No pump, no machinery, just physics. But digging 4 feet down into Dakota soil in August is like digging into concrete. The ground is baked hard by the sun. Every shovelful feels like chipping stone. Sarah's hands blister on the first day. The blisters pop on the second day. By the third day, her palms are raw meat wrapped in strips of cloth torn from an old skirt. Her children help when they can. Michael, age 10, hauls rocks out of the trench. Lena, age 8, brings water from the creek. Little Thomas, only 5, sits in the shade and tries not to cry when he sees his mother's bleeding hands. The neighbors watch from a distance, some with pity, some with contempt. None offer to help. Helping a fool, they reason, only makes you a fool. Sarah digs 6 hours a day. Then she works on the house framing. Then she tends the garden. Then she makes dinner. Then she collapses into sleep so deep it feels like death. She loses 15 pounds in 4 weeks. Her face becomes gaunt. Her hands become claws. But the trench grows. 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet. On August 27th, a freight wagon arrives from Yankton with her order, 60 sections of clay drainage pipe, each 4 feet long, each 4 inches in diameter. Total cost, $9.40. It is nearly everything she has left. Clayton Hodges rides over to watch her unload them. "Those are drainage pipes," he says, "for ditches. You are going to bury those?" "Yes, sir," Sarah replies. "And you think that will heat your home?" "I do. Ma'am, I have heated homes for 20 years. You need fire. You need combustion. You need British thermal units released through oxidation of carbon. You cannot get that from dirt." Sarah wipes sweat from her forehead. "Mr. Hodges, do you know what temperature it is right now?" He glances at the sky. "Maybe 90 degrees. "And do you know what temperature it is 6 feet underground right now?" He frowns. "No, 55 degrees. It is always 55 degrees. In summer, the earth is cooler than the air. In winter, the earth is warmer than the air. If I can move air through that earth, I can borrow its temperature. That is not magic. That is thermodynamics." Clayton stares at her. Then he laughs and rides away. That woman read one book and thinks she is smarter than every engineer in the territory, he tells Captain Brenner that night. But Sarah is not guessing. Her father had explained it to her when she was 12. He had met a man, a French trapper named Leblanc, who had lived with the Mandan people for a decade. The Mandan built their winter lodges partially underground for a reason. The earth insulates. The earth stores heat. The earth is the most efficient thermal battery in existence. Here is the science, explained simply. Air is a terrible conductor of heat, but an excellent insulator when it is still. The earth, 6 feet down, maintains a constant temperature because it is insulated by the soil above it. That soil has a thermal mass thousands of times greater than air. In winter, when the air temperature is -40, the ground temperature at 6 feet is still 55. That 95-degree difference is free energy. All you have to do is capture it. Sarah's system works through convection. Cold air is denser than warm air, so it sinks. The intake pipe, positioned low and outside the house, naturally pulls in cold winter air. That air travels through 300 feet of pipe buried 4 feet deep, surrounded by 55-degree earth. The pipe acts as a heat exchanger. By the time the air reaches the house, it has been warmed significantly. It rises through the vent into the living space. As it rises, it creates a vacuum that pulls more cold air into the system. The cycle continues without pumps, without fuel, without human intervention. This is not magic. This is the same principle that drives a thermal siphon, a convection oven, or a geothermal heat pump. The difference is that Sarah is building it with hand tools and clay pipes in 1887. By September 15th, the trench is complete. 300 feet of pipe, laid in a careful spiral, buried 4 feet deep, backfilled with soil and tamped down. The intake is a simple hood made from scrap tin, positioned 2 feet off the ground on the north side of the property. The exhaust is a vent hole in the foundation of the house, covered with a metal grate to keep out rodents. The house itself is small, 14 by 16 feet, timber frame with sod walls for insulation, a single room with a sleeping loft. The stove is tiny, designed for cooking, not heating. The whole structure looks ramshackle and pathetic compared to Clayton Hodges' whitewashed 2-story home. On September 20th, the first cold snap hits. The temperature drops to 38 degrees overnight. Sarah lights a small fire in the stove to cook breakfast. Then she lets it die. She places her hand over the vent in the floor, and she feels it. Warm air, not hot, not blazing, but noticeably warmer than the outside air. 50 degrees, maybe 55. Rising gently, steadily, silently. She kneels down and puts her face over the vent. She closes her eyes, and for the first time in 4 months, she allows herself to believe that she might be right. Michael comes over and kneels beside her. "Mama, is it working?" Sarah nods, tears in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, it is working. But the real test is still ahead. September is not winter. Winter in Dakota Territory is not a season. It is a siege." October 9th, 1887. The first hard freeze. 22 degrees. Ice forms on the creek. The prairie grass turns brown and brittle. Families across Willow Creek begin their preparations. Clayton Hodges has 8 cords of firewood stacked beside his house, each log split and dried. He has a new Acme oak stove, shipped from Chicago, that cost $43. His house has double-stud walls filled with sawdust insulation. He is ready. Captain Brenner has 6 cords of firewood and a military-issue heating stove designed to warm a barracks. He has weather-stripped every window and door. He is confident. Reverend Hartwell has 4 cords and a potbelly stove. He believes that faith and hard work will see him through. He is prepared. Sarah Thornton has 1 cord of firewood. 1. Most families would burn through that in 3 weeks. The whispers intensify. That poor woman. Those poor children. When is someone going to step in and stop this madness? On October 21st, the temperature drops to 15 degrees. Clayton Hodges lights his big stove for the first time. It roars to life, consuming logs at a ferocious rate. The house warms to 65 degrees, but the walls near the windows are cold to the touch. Drafts snake across the floor. He wears a wool sweater indoors. His wife wraps the children in blankets. They are warm enough, comfortable enough. But the stove is hungry. He feeds it 4 logs before breakfast, 6 more by lunch. Captain Brenner's experience is similar. His stove is efficient, but the wind finds every gap in the walls. He stuffs rags in the cracks. He hangs blankets over the windows at night. He calculates that he is burning approximately 1 cord per month. Acceptable, sustainable, but exhausting. Someone must tend the fire every 3 hours, day and night. Sarah Thornton does not light her stove. The temperature inside her home is 58 degrees. Cool, but not cold. She puts on a wool sweater. The children wear long sleeves. They are comfortable. The air from the vent continues to rise, steady and silent. On November 6th, the first snow falls. 3 inches. The temperature drops to 8 degrees. Clayton Hodges burns 6 logs before noon. His house is warm, but his woodpile is shrinking faster than he expected. He does the math. 8 cords, 4 months of winter. 2 cords per month. He is burning at 2.5 cords per month. He will run out by March. He will need to buy more wood or start rationing heat. Sarah lights her stove for the first time that winter, not to heat the house, to cook dinner. She burns 4 small logs. When dinner is finished, she lets the fire die. The temperature inside the house is 62 degrees. The geothermal system is carrying the load. On November 18th, the temperature drops to -5. This is the real test. Clayton Hodges' stove roars day and night. He is burning 8 logs per day now. His hands are covered in splinters and soot. He is exhausted. His wife is exhausted. But they are warm. Captain Brenner is managing, but just barely. He has implemented a strict fire schedule. Big fire in the morning. Let it die to coals during the day. Big fire at night. The house temperature swings from 70 degrees to 55 degrees and back again. It is not comfortable, but it is survivable. Sarah lights her stove once per day in the evening for 2 hours. 4 logs. The geothermal system keeps the baseline temperature at 55 degrees. The stove boosts it to 68 for the evening. Then she lets it die, and the house slowly cools back to 55 overnight. Her children sleep soundly. She uses 15 logs per week. Clayton Hodges uses 56. On December 3rd, Clayton Hodges rides over to Sarah's house. He has heard rumors that she is not burning wood. He does not believe it. He assumes she is freezing and too proud to admit it. He is prepared to offer her charity, though it will sting his pride to do so. He knocks on the door. Sarah opens it. She is wearing a simple cotton dress. No coat, no shawl. Behind her, he can see the children playing on the floor. The air that spills out of the open door is warm. "Mrs. Thornton," he says slowly, "may I come in?" "Of course, Mr. Hodges." He steps inside. The warmth hits him like a physical force. It is not blazing heat. It is not oppressive. It is just comfortable. The kind of temperature you do not think about. The stove is cold. He can see that clearly. No fire, no coals, No residual heat. He looks around for another heat source. There is none. He walks to the vent in the floor and kneels down. He holds his hand over it. Warm air rises against his palm. Steady, gentle, impossible. How, he says quietly. Sarah smiles. The earth, Mr. Hodges. It is always 55 degrees down there. I am just borrowing it. He stares at the vent, then at her, then back at the vent. But there is no fire, no combustion. No, sir. Just air and earth and physics. He stands slowly, his knees creaking. He is a proud man, a successful man, a man who believes he understands how the world works. And this widow, with bleeding hands and $12 to her name, has just proven him wrong. He does not say thank you. He does not apologize for his mockery. He simply nods and walks out. But the set of his jaw has changed. The certainty is gone. That evening, he tells his wife, I do not understand it, but it is real. That woman's house is warmer than ours, and she is barely burning any wood. His wife looks up from her sewing. Maybe you should ask her how she did it. Clayton shakes his head. Not yet. Maybe she just got lucky. Maybe it only works in a small house. Maybe it will fail when the real cold comes. But in his heart, he knows the truth. She was right, and he was wrong. January 12th, 1888. The barometer begins to fall. Experienced plainsmen recognize the signs. The wind shifts to the northwest. The sky turns a pale, sickly yellow. The birds disappear. The cattle bunch together, restless and nervous. By noon, the temperature has dropped to 0. By 2 in the afternoon, the snow begins, not gentle flakes, hard, needle-sharp ice crystals driven by a wind that screams across the prairie at 50 miles per hour. This is the storm that will later be known as the schoolhouse blizzard of 1888. It will kill over 235 people across the Great Plains. It will drop the temperature to -40 in a matter of hours. It will create whiteout conditions so complete that men will freeze to death 10 feet from their own front doors, unable to see, unable to breathe, unable to find shelter. By 4 in the afternoon, the temperature is -15. By 6, it is -30. By midnight, it is -42. Clayton Hodges feeds his stove frantically. 10 logs, 15 logs, 20 logs. The fire roars, but the heat is sucked away by the wind, tearing through every crack in the walls. The windows frost over on the inside. The water bucket freezes solid. His children huddle under every blanket in the house, shivering violently. The house temperature is 50 degrees near the stove, 35 degrees in the corners. He looks at his woodpile. He has burned through half a cord in 18 hours. If the storm lasts 3 days, he will run out. And if he runs out, his family will freeze. Captain Brenner is in worse shape. His stove cannot keep up. He has burned through every piece of furniture he can spare. He breaks up a wooden chair and feeds it to the flames. The temperature in his home is 45 degrees. He can see his breath. His fingers are numb. He knows, with the cold clarity of a man facing death, that he has made a terrible miscalculation. Reverend Hartwell is on his knees, praying. His woodpile is nearly gone. His stove glows red-hot, but the room is still freezing. His faith is strong, but his body is weak. He is 56 years old. His hands shake. His lips are blue. He prays for deliverance, but the wind howls louder than his prayers. In Sarah Thornton's small house, the temperature is 60 degrees. The geothermal system continues to function exactly as designed. Cold air is pulled into the pipes, warmed by the earth, and rises into the house. The storm does not affect the ground temperature. The wind cannot reach the pipes. The system is immune to weather. Sarah lights her small stove and burns 6 logs, more than usual, to boost the temperature to 68 degrees. Her children sleep soundly. She sits at the table, mending a shirt by candlelight, listening to the wind shriek outside. She thinks about her neighbors. She knows they are struggling. She knows they are suffering. And despite their mockery, despite their cruelty, she cannot let them freeze. On the morning of January 13th, the storm continues. Sarah bundles up and fights her way through chest-deep snow to Clayton Hodges' house. She has to stop twice to catch her breath, the wind stealing the air from her lungs. She pounds on his door. He opens it. His face is grey with exhaustion. Behind him, the house is chaos. Children crying. His wife, hollow-eyed. The stove glowing but inadequate. "Mr. Hodges," Sarah shouts over the wind. "Bring your family to my house." He stares at her. "What?" "My house is warm. Bring your family. Now." His pride wars with his fear. Pride loses. He nods. Within an hour, Clayton Hodges, his wife and their 4 children are huddled in Sarah's small home. The warmth hits them like a miracle. The children stop shivering. Mrs. Hodges begins to cry, silent tears of relief and shame. Sarah makes coffee. She serves cornbread. She does not gloat. She does not lecture. She simply says, "You are welcome to stay as long as the storm lasts." Clayton sits near the vent, holding his hands over the rising air. He does not speak. He does not need to. The warmth speaks for him. By midday, Captain Brenner arrives, half frozen, his face raw with frostbite. By evening, Reverend Hartwell stumbles to the door, barely able to stand. Sarah takes them all in. 14 people in a 14 by 16-foot house. It should be cramped. It should be miserable. But it is warm. And warmth, in that moment, is everything. They stay for 3 days. 3 days while the storm rages. 3 days while the temperature outside hovers between -30 and -50. 3 days while Sarah's geothermal system continues to function, silent and steady, asking nothing, giving everything. On the 3rd day, the wind dies. The sun breaks through. The temperature rises to -10, which feels like a heat wave. The families emerge from Sarah's house like survivors of a shipwreck, blinking in the light, alive. Clayton Hodges stands in the snow and looks at Sarah. He removes his hat. "Mrs. Thornton," he says, his voice rough. "I was wrong. I am sorry." Sarah nods. "No apology needed, Mr. Hodges. We all do what we think is best." He shakes his head. "No, I mocked you. I bet against you. I wanted you to fail, because I could not stand the idea that a woman with no education might know something I did not. That was pride. That was foolishness. You saved my family's lives. I will not forget that." Captain Brenner steps forward. "Mrs. Thornton, I do not understand how your system works, but I would like to learn. Would you teach me?" Sarah smiles. "Of course, Captain. It is not complicated. It just requires that you listen to the earth instead of the textbooks." Reverend Hartwell is last. He looks at Sarah for a long moment. Then he says, "I told you that pride comes before a fall. I was speaking to the wrong person. May God forgive me." Sarah reaches out and squeezes his hand. "We all survived, Reverend. That is what matters." Spring comes to Dakota Territory in late April. The snow melts. The creek runs high and fast. The prairie turns green overnight, an explosion of life that seems impossible after the death of winter. All 6 families in Willow Creek survived the schoolhouse blizzard. In the surrounding counties, 31 people froze to death. But not in Willow Creek, because when the storm came, there was one house that stayed warm. And that house had room for everyone. Clayton Hodges does not rebuild his house. Instead, he hires Sarah to design a geothermal system for him. He pays her $50, more money than she has seen in 2 years. She teaches him how to calculate the pipe length, how to determine the burial depth, how to position the intake and exhaust for maximum convection. He listens, he learns, he builds. By the fall of 1888, 4 houses in Willow Creek have geothermal air systems. By 1890, the technique has spread to 11 other settlements in Dakota Territory. It becomes known locally as the Thornton method, though Sarah never calls it that. She simply calls it common sense. Captain Brenner writes a paper on the system. He submits it to the Army Corps of Engineers. They file it away, unread. It will be 70 years before engineers rediscover the principles of geothermal heat exchange and begin installing similar systems in modern homes. They will call it ground source heat pumps. They will patent it. They will sell it for thousands of dollars. But in 1888, it was just a widow with a shovel and an idea. Sarah Thornton lives on her homestead for 34 more years. She remarries in 1891 to a widower named John Brenner, the younger brother of Captain Brenner. They have 2 more children. She becomes a respected member of the community. She teaches her technique to anyone who asks. She never charges more than $50, and she often teaches for free. When she dies in 1922 at the age of 68, the entire county attends her funeral. Clayton Hodges, now an old man, gives the eulogy. He tells the story of the schoolhouse blizzard. He tells the story of the warmth. He tells the story of the woman who was mocked, doubted, and dismissed, but who saved them all. He ends with this. Sarah Thornton taught me that wisdom does not come from books or titles or wealth. It comes from listening to the people who came before us, listening to the land, listening to the quiet voice that says, there is a better way, even when everyone else is shouting that you are wrong. Today, geothermal systems are recognized as one of the most efficient heating and cooling technologies in existence. The ground temperature at 6 feet is still 55 degrees, winter or summer, just as it was in 1887. Modern systems use pumps and refrigerants and complex controls, but the principle is identical to what Sarah Thornton built with clay pipes and a shovel. The earth is patient. The earth is constant. The earth does not care about your pride or your degrees or your opinions. It simply is. And if you are humble enough to learn from it, it will give you everything you need. History is written by the survivors. And often, the survivors are the ones who dare to think differently. Sarah Thornton was mocked for burying pipes in her yard. Her neighbors predicted she would freeze. But when the White Death came howling across the Dakota prairie, when the temperature dropped to -40 and the wind stole the breath from your lungs, Sarah Thornton's house stayed 50 degrees warmer than everyone else's. With no fire, with no fuel, with nothing but the wisdom of the earth and the courage to trust it. If this story of resilience inspired you, like this video and share it with someone who appreciates the old ways. The survival skills of the past are not primitive. They are proven. And in a world that grows more fragile every day, it is worth remembering that the smartest technology is often the simplest. Dig deep, listen close, and never let the experts tell you that common sense is foolishness, because sometimes the widow with bleeding hands knows more than the engineer with the degree. And when winter comes, it is not your pride that will keep you warm. It is your preparation, your humility, and your willingness to learn from those who survived before you. Thank you for watching. This has been the story of Sarah Thornton and the geothermal system that saved Willow Creek. Subscribe for more forgotten stories of survival, ingenuity, and the indomitable human spirit. Because history is not just about kings and wars. It is about ordinary people who did extraordinary things, and those stories, those lessons, are too valuable to forget.